Batna, your plan B in negotiations. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to negotiate something like the price of a car or the terms of a job offer? Negotiating can be tough, but one key thing you need to know before you start negotiation is your Batna. Batna stands for best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's your backup plan, what you'll do if you can't reach a deal. Let's say you're buying a used car. The seller wants $5,000, but you were hoping to pay $4,000. Before you start negotiating, you need to know your Batna. What will you do if you can't agree on a price with this seller? Maybe you could buy a different used car from another seller for $4,500. That $4,500 car would be your Batna. Knowing your Batna is so important in negotiations because it sets the minimum deal you're willing to accept. If the seller won't go below $4,500, then you know you'd be better off buying the other car for $4,500 instead. Your Batna of $4,500 gives you the confidence to walk away from a bad deal. On the other hand, if your Batna is weaker, maybe the only other car you can find is $5,500, then you'll be more likely to accept the seller's $5,000 offer, even though it's higher than your ideal price of $4,000. A weak Batna puts you in a weaker bargaining position. Let's look at another example. A new college graduate is applying for management jobs. You interview at a local restaurant and they offer you a job for $17.25 per hour. Before you accept or reject the offer, you need to think about your Batna. What else could you do if you don't take the restaurant job? Maybe you could work at the local hotel, making $20 per hour. That $20 per hour job would be your Batna. Knowing that, you can negotiate with the restaurant and say, I'd be happy to work for you, but I need at least $19 per hour to make it worth my while. Since your Batna of $20 per hour is better than their offer, you have the leverage to negotiate a higher wage. On the other hand, let's say your only other option is to stay home. That would be a pretty weak Batna, so you'd be more likely to just accept the restaurant's minimum wage offer, even though it's lower than what you'd ideally like to make. The key is to always know your Batna before entering into any kind of negotiation. If you don't, you risk making a bad deal just because you feel like you have no other choice. People who don't know their Batna often end up accepting offers that are much worse than the alternatives they could have pursued. Knowing your Batna gives you the confidence to negotiate for a better deal or walk away entirely. Of course, sometimes your Batna isn't as clear-cut. Let's go back to the car buying example. Maybe you found one car for $4,500 and another. Which one is your Batna? It's not always easy to decide. That's why it's important to really think through all your options and try to quantify the value of each one as precisely as possible. The better you can define your Batna, the stronger your negotiating position will be. If your Batna is rock solid, you can confidently walk away from a bad deal. But if your Batna is weak, you'll be more likely to settle for an offer that's not as good as it could be. Knowing your Batna takes some work up front, but it pays off big time when you're in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation. So before you enter into any important negotiation, take the time to figure out your plan B. It could make all the difference in getting the best possible outcome. The next step is to know your walkaway price.